you get involved with performing in musical theater growing up?
Yeah, I definitely caught the bug very early. I think I was in fifth grade, and my class did like an opera that we wrote with our quotation that we wrote with our choir teacher, and I was just like desperate to be the lead, and totally loved it, and never really considered doing anything else after that moment.
And then when did you know you wanted to do professionally, go to college to study musical theater?
I think at the same time, I remember being like 10, fifth grade, and being like, yeah, I'm gonna go to Juilliard or like NYU, little Utah Jane, not really knowing anything yet, but being firmly set on my future. And yeah, I feel really fortunate that I was so confident and passionate about something at such a young age.
And were there any shows in particular that you either saw or listened to the cast album that you were like, that's it, that's what I want to do?
I mean, I know I was deeply obsessed with Les Mis, obviously, as every like tween and teen is, I feel. I definitely had a big like Little Shop of Horrors phase. Um, I loved listening to Into the Woods, and The Last 5 Years. And I mean, I there weren't as many things that I saw. I didn't go to New York until I was 16, I think. So the first kind of set of shows I actually saw on Broadway were like the original cast of Drowsy Chaperone, and which was amazing, and the original company of The Color Purple. So those were also like huge moments in my kind of young creative life, I think, of feeling really passionate about going into it. And Spring Awakening as well. I saw Spring Awakening and auditioned for it way back when, and like had my first like fancy Broadway callback, and you know wore an insane outfit. So yeah, Spring Awakening was another big one.
And then, so you went to University of Michigan for college. What was your experience like there? And did you have a show that you really enjoyed doing while you were there?
Yeah, I really loved my time at Michigan. I think a big part of what I really took from the program was the ability that I had to kind of foster other interests and creative ideas that I was having. I took several directing classes as an actor so that I could kind of learn about directing while also doing more acting. And I took additional classes with the acting majors. I took some really interesting academic courses that I'm really grateful for. I was able to sort of like explore writing my own music more. So I think the whole experience of being there was just really, it felt like such a supportive environment. I loved Ann Arbor. It was just a great kind of 4 years of becoming an adult, and also like getting to fully immerse myself in everything I loved. Um, yeah. Was there a part two to your question?
It was just like if you had a show that you enjoyed.
Oh, a show. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I loved. We did a play my sophomore year. I think it's called Our Country's Good. I think that's the name of it, and that was really cool because it was this kind of black box production, and I feel like we really did a lot of incredible ensemble work in the cast, led by our amazing director Malcolm, and that was a really huge experience for me. I think it really made me want to do theater like that, and now when I do direct like youth productions, I feel like I'm very inspired by that experience, and sort of like, how can we use, a wooden box and turn it into something magical with movement and creativity, and like all putting our heads together. And I also got to do Little Women my junior year, which was incredible. Danny Gerwin came and directed it, and he was the original Laurie on Broadway, and that was incredible. And I got to play Joe, and I'd played Joe in high school as well. So it was really incredible to not only play that character again at the University of Michigan, which was really mind blowing, but also that I got to kind of re-examine that character 4 years after having played it, as a teenager. It was really a very special experience.
Nice. So one of my very favorite musicals is The Ballad of Little Joe. Love the soundtrack to that show. What was the audition process like for that, and kind of just like the experience you had in that cast, in the show with that cast?
Yeah, I don't know that I have like any huge memories of the audition process. I remember the dance call, and I remember it was very like we all were doing sort of like minor movements and everything. And the choreographer is actually now the associate choreographer on Jagged Little Pill. And he's become a dear friend, Mark Kimmelman. So I remember that experience. And I remember like, I think a lot of those auditions for cool new musicals, it's like you see a lot of people that and you're like rooting for them because you know them and you love them, but you're also trying to make your own way. I definitely remember Teal Wicks standing out to me, and I was like, wow, she's so pretty, like she's so cool. And then getting to work on it with the company was really amazing. I got to live with Kristen Stokes, and we got really close and had a great time. And definitely working with Teal and Lena Rideout and kind of these amazing epic performers, especially the ladies in the company. It was really really inspiring, and just the music and the story and the role that I got to kind of play in that show were it was truly like a dream role scenario, 100%.
And did you have a favorite moment in the show to perform?
Oh, I remember the first time we were in rehearsal and we're learning After You, and I was just learning my part, and I couldn't even get through the music rehearsal because I just was like weeping. And I think that moment was always really powerful to me because for that moment for Sarah was such a kind of complicated gut punch of like she's trying to tell Joe this much deeper thing, but she can't really say it because the guy who loves her is right there, and she doesn't want to totally break his heart. And I just found that song musically so emotionally compelling, and that moment in the story so um, nuanced and complicated in such an awesome way.
Awesome. And then fast forward, pre-Broadway Shutdown, you were part of Jagged Little Pill, your Broadway debut. What was that like, being able to finally, get there on Broadway? What was the experience like, that first show?
I like that you said finally get there. That's exactly how it felt. I was like, oh my goodness, I have been putting in my time, like planting seeds, waiting for kind of the right moment, you know, to finally get my foot in the Broadway door, really. And it was incredible. I mean, the first time we had an audience at the Broadhurst was extraordinary. And even I remember walking into the theater for the first time, I was with John Cardoza, who I love so darn much, and we both were just like totally overwhelmed. And I think also the experience of making my debut alongside so many other people who were making their debuts, um, and also just among a group of people who, all of us had really grown together as humans in an immense way since the out of town tryout. Everything about the show really led us, I think, to all do so much work on ourselves as humans as well as performers. And so it felt like getting to opening night and having that experience was just like this amazing reward for so much work that was deeper than just like the choreography and the music. And it was like this, I think it was a deeply personal journey, for all of us.
Was there a lot of changes in the show going from ART to Broadway? And was there a song or a moment in the show that you that got taken out that you wish could still be in the current version?
Yeah, I think a lot of the changes from ART to Broadway had to do with structuring of the show. And I feel like all the changes they made were extraordinary. I remember the first time we did a read through of the script, we did a workshop in between Out of Town and Broadway. And the first time we read kind of the new organized script with some little tweaks and things, there was a new scene for Bella, which is one of my very favorite moments in the show. And I was just completely blown away by the adjustments that they made and the way that it clarified the story, because it's a complicated story. There's a lot of characters and there's a lot going on. And so I really think all the changes were just brilliant. And none of them were that deep. I mean, obviously, since the music was already an established thing, there wasn't like, Elena didn't write any new songs for us between the two. But let's see, I do miss So Unsexy used to be in Mary Jane and Steve's closet. And the ensemble, we were like behind their clothes and like peeking out and like passing them things. And I think that the change they made was the right change, but I just kind of thought that was fun to do. It was fun to like peer through the clothes at like a naked Sean Curl. So, you know, I miss that in its own special ways. And I think there's a couple other amazing one-liners that Diablo Cody wrote that didn't make it to opening night that will always live in my heart.
Do you remember what it was like meeting Elena Morissette for the first time?
Oh goodness, I feel like actually I do really remember because she came to watch like our final run through in New York before we were going to go to ART, and I was so amped to meet her and see her, and she was so cool, and she has like the coolest tattoos, and I think she had her, you know, cute like pixie haircut at the time, and she was so warm and so nice. And we did that run through, and I headbanged so hard and You Ought to Know that I gave myself like an insanely severe migraine. So I do remember meeting her for the first time, but also like after that rehearsal, I like couldn't speak and couldn't see and like had to go, you know, lay in a dark room until I like left the next morning to go to Cambridge. So it's a little bit of a blur, I have to be honest, but it was so impactful that I like basically gave myself a concussion. So I would say big impact.
Yes, yes, definitely. So you understudy two roles while also being in the ensemble. What is it like trying to learn two principles while at the same time just having to practice your regular role that you perform?
Yeah, it's wild. I've never been an understudy before. Really, I've done a little understudying, but not at all in this sort of setting. And I had already been familiar with Bella because I understudied it out of town. And so that was a little easier. And when we started doing understudy rehearsals, that was kind of my first focus. But I was still sort of just trying to always watch Elizabeth Stanley and like get the ins and outs of what she was doing. And then there was a week when Laurel Harris, who also understudies Mary Jane, was out with an injury. And I was like, holy shit, if Elle Stans goes down, I will be called up to bat for this like beast of a role. And I think I lost my mind that week and was like, you know, bringing Elle Stans like juices and like frantically like changing my clothes off stage and like also trying to do all of MJ's monologues, and like I'm sure I looked like a crazy person. So yeah, it was overwhelming. I'm the only understudy who didn't actually go on before the shutdown. So I can't tell. I mean, obviously I would love to go on at some point, and I will have a lot of relearning to do, I think, in the coming months to get back in shape in that regard. Yeah, it was amazing. So hard. I like swings and people who are understudies frequently, like, oof, those are superheroes.
So you've played a lot of really awesome roles in the past, but is there a dream role that you would love to be able to do one day?
Yeah, I mean, I think dream roles are for me are things that probably haven't been written yet. I really totally love originating roles and doing new works like Ballad of Little Joe. My boyfriend, Elia Heifetz, is a composer, and he is working on this really cool Western with these two badass lady characters. So that's definitely a dream role. And I'm trying to think, I would love to play Sally Bowles someday. I just think that show is, I think Cabaret is just such an extraordinary piece of theater. Um, I don't know. There's lots of things. Sunday in the Park with George, I love. I'd love to be Dot someday. I'd love to be the baker's wife someday. Um, yeah.
Awesome. So one of the harder parts about being in the industry is being told no, getting rejected from roles. What keeps you motivated and keep going to those auditions when it may not always work out in your favor?
Oh goodness. I wish I knew. Um, I I definitely struggle a lot with like comparing myself to others, or if I don't get a job, really being extremely hard on myself about why. Um, and I think one thing that's helped me, and one thing that I tell my students, is like, you have to really go into every audition thinking about the work that you're doing, the story you're telling, and what your kind of goal is for that audition, just to kind of move your own artistry forward, instead of putting the pressure on yourself that, like, you have to get this role or it means that you suck, um, and I think that's often easier said than done. um, but I think that, and kind of knowing that every time you walk into a room you get to like interact with these casting directors and music directors, and hopefully just build relationships, so that whenever it is the right time for you to get a role, um, that there will be a lot of people in your corner talking about you, bringing you up. I've had the great honor of being an audition reader a lot as well in the city, which I highly recommend for anyone, if you have the opportunity to do it, because you just learn so much about, um, how many things are out of your control when you're going into those auditions. And you leave the room and you can have, maybe you had like the best audition you've ever had, and you feel like the rapport with everyone in the room was amazing, um, but you won't know that when you leave the room, they get a call that someone else who has like insane movie credits like is interested, or they're going a different direction because of the puzzle of someone else being a certain height, or there's just so many things that are out of your control that I think, uh, yeah, I think I've hung on by just continuing to practice, uh, an amount of gentle understanding, when things don't go my way, which is, again, easier said than done a lot of the time.
Aside from musical theater, you also write your own songs. When did that sort of become another aspiration of yours?
I started writing music when I was in high school. I think I just wanted a way to like feel my feelings, I was never good at keeping a journal. And so I was like, I'll write songs, I'll learn guitar. And I think when I was in college, that's when I started taking it a bit more seriously, and playing at little open mics, or um, different settings, hangs, whatever. Um, I'm sure a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, here comes Jane again with her guitar." But I'm also grateful that for the people who listened. Um, and yeah, I think I went to like a songwriting workshop, called the Johnny Mercer Songwriter Project a couple years ago, and that was the first time I've really been in a setting where I was just identified as a writer. Um, and it was an amazing experience. And it was also really cool because some of the people who were there were musical theater writers. And so when we did the final performance, I then also got to sing a lot of really amazing new musical theater work. Um, and yeah, it was a really incredible experience to just spend a week only thinking about my writing. And I had kind of a prolific week writing. I think I wrote like 6 songs in a week, which is a lot more than I usually do. And a lot of those songs are now becoming part of a one-woman show that I'm writing, that I got commissioned to write from a theater in California. And hopefully that will be something that I can start performing and doing, in the next year-ish. And then I'm also working on, finishing up an album that I recorded a couple years ago, and putting that out, as well as some other music that I'm hoping to record soon. So yeah, it's definitely kind of transitioned into something I am taking a lot more seriously, um, but not instead of acting. I think it's funny sometimes I meet people who think that I'm just a musician, who, and I certainly consider myself an actor first, and a musician kind of as this hobby and expression that has become something else I've started to trust a little bit more deeply, as a viable offshoot of my creative career. Um, but it's certainly been a longer and slower journey, sort of building up the confidence in that realm, which is also why it's taken me 2 years to release an album.
So when you're writing these songs, where does the inspiration come from?
I feel like I write when I get just like oof, like pregnant with a feeling that I don't know what it is, and I feel weird, and then I just like blech, vomit out like a song baby. Um, I am working on writing more, just to write when I'm not necessarily feeling really uncomfortable or sad or emotional in some way. But yeah, I mean, I think my songs are definitely inspired by my own experiences. I think my songs are really honest. There's definitely several songs in the show I'm writing that are the most honest and vulnerable things I've ever put to music or said, really. So I think that will be a really, hopefully, a very powerful kind of experience for everyone who comes to that. Um, yes, I don't know that I quite have the, I don't know. I've had people ask me before if I am interested in writing musicals, and I can't quite fathom yet writing about someone other than myself, but maybe someday. I'm certainly open to it.
Going back to musical theater now, I always like to ask, what is advice that you would give to people who want to go into be on Broadway, go into musical theater?
I think it's important to always be learning. I think as art, I think sometimes in musical theater, I feel like there's not enough focus kept on the artist aspect of it. It can feel very much like this sort of machine, and the same people get the jobs, and certain things get you the jobs. And I think it can feel a bit like there are certain boxes you have to fit into in order to be successful. And then I think when you're thinking that way, then you're not really absorbing everything around you that can teach you things and help you grow in the way that, I don't know. I just think anytime you can keep the focus on education and learning and growing, um, in any aspect, even just in your day-to-day life, and how you can apply that to being a storyteller or a creator or a writer or an actor. I just think that that mentality really keeps your tank full in the slow times.
Is there a performer that you would love to be able to work with one day?
Oh, yes. Lately, I've been really crazy about Rachel Bay Jones. I think she's extraordinary. And also, oh gosh, oh, that's a hard question. Yeah, I think there are so many. Let me, who else do I really want to work with? I don't know, so many people. I went to theater camp forever ago with Mary Kate Morrissey, and I think she's a total badass. Um, and I feel like something with her would be super fun. Anything, I don't know. Give me all the badass ladies out there.
Yeah.
I want to work with all of them.
Yeah.
All the dames, all the divas, all.
Hmm. Do you remember that day, almost a year ago, when Broadway did shut down?
Yeah, I can't believe it's been almost a year, but I do remember, leading up to that day, we all were sort of speculating, you know, what about what was going to happen, and if we'd have a couple, like, oh, we'll have a couple weeks off. Like, oh my goodness, the how little we knew. Um, but yeah, I remember, I think it was a Thursday, and some people had understudy rehearsal that day, and I think they might have even still gone to understudy rehearsal. And I remember just being in my apartment and being really unsettled, and really, I just felt so weird, like waiting to hear what was going to happen. Um, it was totally, totally bizarre.
What do you miss most about performing?
I think I miss the 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 people, the energy exchange, the cast, the stage door interactions. It's just kind of the whole social, I don't know, like life that it sort of gives you to both work with other people, to perform for people, to meet new people after each show. Um, yeah, I mean, it's a kind of buzz that you really can't recreate, especially when you're just in your apartment alone.
You were able to perform for a couple televised events like the parade and the Best Broadway event, and then there was also the reunion show that you guys all did. What was it like getting back, not fully into the show, but getting to go back perform with your castmates, but in a very new normal kind of way?
Yeah, it was it was great. I got to be a part of the parade and the one night only performance. And I think the hardest thing for all of us was that with the concert and with those performances, because of COVID restrictions, we couldn't all be a part of it. And so that made it like great, but also so weird because we were rehearsing, we're kind of refiguring things out. But then you're like, oh man, like I'm standing in this place because so and so isn't here just purely because of like number restrictions, you know? And so it was such a like sort of sweet and sour experience in that way because it I think just made us all so badly want to all be together, you know? Um, but it was very interesting to kind of like come back to the music and the movement and the energy of all of it. I think it was really cathartic to get to do You Ought to Know on One Night Only and release a lot of this sort of angst and uh, anger and emotion we all feel towards just the circumstances that we're in. Um, yeah, it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. I can't believe. I mean, obviously, performing on the parade wasn't really the same situation as it would be in other years, but I mean, I've been getting up early to watch the parade since I was a kid. That was like one of the first ways I even knew about what Broadway was like waking up early to watch, the Macy's Day performances. So definitely a pretty enormous dream come true to like get to be a part of that.
Do you ever like think about what that first performance back is going to be like?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably we're all gonna be just like panting, sweaty piles on the floor because we'll all be so like out of shape for what, doing that show is. But um yeah, I mean, when I think of like the electricity that was in the theater on our first preview, I feel like it'll be like that, but like tripled plus every moment of the show that is, socially important and like impactful, I think will hit even harder. And um yeah, I can't wait. I think it's going to be pretty magical.